It wasn't serious. Everyone jokes about older men being handsome. I didn't mean it literally. I love my boyfriend. I was just being playful. If he's so insecure he can't handle one comment about his dad, that's on him, not me. The afternoon started so perfectly that it felt like something from a romantic comedy. Warm sunshine, the smell of burgers on the grill, and that relaxed atmosphere that comes from spending time with people who genuinely care about each other and want to celebrate being together. Jake's family had invited me to their annual summer barbecue, a tradition they'd maintained for over 15 years that brought together relatives, close friends, and neighbors for an afternoon of food, games, and the kind of easy socializing that made me feel honored to be included in their inner circle. I'd been dating Jake for 10 months, and this was my third time attending one of their family gatherings. Each previous event had made me feel more welcomed and accepted by his parents, siblings, and extended family, who treated me with warmth and genuine interest rather than the polite distance that sometimes characterizes meeting a boyfriend's relatives. Jake's mom had pulled me aside earlier in the afternoon to tell me how happy she was that Jake had found someone who made him laugh so much, and his younger sister had been asking for advice about college applications, treating me like an older sister figure she could confide in about her future plans. The whole day had been filled with moments that made me feel like I was becoming part of something special. Inside jokes with Jake's cousins, helping his mom in the kitchen, playing cornhole with his dad while Jake manned the grill. It was exactly the kind of family integration that suggested our relationship was moving towards something serious and long-term. That's what made the disaster that followed so completely unexpected and devastating. I'd been standing near the patio with 3 of my closest girlfriends who'd been invited to join the celebration, sharing a bottle of wine and enjoying the relaxed atmosphere while Jake was busy with hosting duties and family obligations that kept him moving around the yard. The conversation had been typical friend group chatter, observations about the party, compliments about the food, and the kind of casual commentary about attractive men that happens when women feel comfortable and uninhibited around each other. That's when Sarah made a comment about how distinguished older men could be, mentioning how Jake's dad had maintained his fitness and attractiveness in ways that made him more appealing now than he'd probably been in his 20s. The observation was meant as a general comment about aging gracefully and taking care of yourself, but it sparked a conversation among my friends about the appeal of silver-haired, experienced men who'd learned how to carry themselves with confidence and sophistication. In that moment, feeling relaxed from the wine and caught up in the playful energy of the conversation, I made the comment that would destroy my relationship and humiliate me in front of Jake's entire extended family. I told my friends that honestly, Jake's dad looked better than Jake did now, and that if I'd met his father first, who knows what might have happened. The comment was meant to be shocking and funny, the kind of outrageous observation that gets laughs from friends who understand you're being provocative rather than serious. I was playing up the forbidden nature of finding my boyfriend's father attractive, treating it as entertainment rather than expressing genuine romantic interest. My friends laughed exactly as I'd expected them to, and for a moment, the comment felt like successful social performance. I'd been bold enough to say something scandalous and gotten the reaction I was hoping for. But then I noticed the sudden silence that had fallen over our little group, and the way my friends' faces had changed from amused to horrified as they looked at something behind me. I turned around to find Jake standing there with a bag of trash in his hands, having clearly heard every word of my comment about his father being more attractive than him. The expression on his face was unlike anything I'd ever seen from him during our 10 months together. Not anger or hurt, but something colder and more final, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time and didn't like what he was discovering. The silence that followed my realization that Jake had heard my comment about his father lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours as I watched his face process what I'd said and what it revealed about my thoughts and feelings regarding both him and his family. Jake didn't say a word in response to what he'd overheard. He didn't demand an explanation, express hurt feelings, or give me an opportunity to clarify that I'd been joking rather than expressing genuine attraction to his father. Instead, he walked past our group with the same mechanical movements he might use to navigate around furniture, treating us like obstacles rather than people worth acknowledging or engaging with. The coldness of his response was more devastating than anger or confrontation would have been. It was clear that Jake had heard enough to understand exactly what I'd said and exactly how inappropriate it was, and that he'd already made decisions about our relationship based on that understanding. I immediately tried to follow him, calling out that I needed to explain what he'd heard, that it had been a joke taken out of context, that I hadn't meant anything serious by the comment about his father. But Jake continued walking toward the house without responding to my attempts at conversation, or giving any indication that he was interested in hearing explanations or apologies for what I'd said about his family. My friends stood frozen in the aftermath of what had just happened, clearly understanding that they'd witnessed something that couldn't be undone or explained away with better communication or mutual understanding. The party atmosphere around us continued normally, with other guests eating, talking, and enjoying themselves, while completely unaware that a relationship crisis was unfolding just feet away from their conversations and laughter. But I could see Jake's family members starting to notice that something was wrong, picking up on the tension and Jake's unusual behavior without understanding what had caused the sudden change in his demeanor. His mom approached me with concern, asking if everything was okay and whether Jake was feeling sick or upset about something. Her genuine worry and affection made my stomach twist with guilt about what I'd said about her husband and how it would affect her perception of me if she ever learned the details. I tried to reassure her that everything was fine, while also scanning the yard for Jake, hoping to catch him alone and attempt some kind of damage control before the situation became irreparable. But Jake had disappeared into the house, and when I followed him inside, I found the bathroom door locked and no response to my knocks or pleas for conversation about what had happened. The remainder of the barbecue was one of the most uncomfortable social experiences of my adult life, as I tried to maintain normal conversation and behavior while internally panicking about what Jake was thinking and planning in response to my comment about his father. Jake eventually emerged from the house, but his entire demeanor had changed, from the warm, attentive boyfriend who'd been proudly introducing me to family members just hours earlier. Now he was going through the motions of hosting duties with mechanical politeness, engaging in necessary conversations while avoiding any meaningful interaction with me. When relatives or family friends asked about our relationship or made comments about how happy we seemed together, Jake responded with non-committal pleasantries that neither confirmed nor denied the positive observations they were sharing. The contrast between his earlier enthusiasm about having me at the family gathering and his current coldness was obvious enough that several family members commented on his mood change, asking if he was feeling well or if something had happened to him, upset him. Jake deflected these questions without providing explanations that would have created drama or awkwardness for other guests, but his responses made it clear that something significant had changed and that he was no longer interested in presenting us as a happy couple to his extended family. My friends tried to provide support by staying close and engaging me in conversations that would distract from Jake's obvious withdrawal, but their efforts only highlighted how isolated I'd become from the person who was supposed to be my partner at this gathering. As the afternoon wore on and guests began preparing to leave, Jake's family members started saying goodbye to me with the kind of warmth and affection that suggested they had no idea this might be the last time they'd see me as part of their family. Celebrations. His mom hugged me tightly and told me she was looking forward to seeing me at the next family gathering, while his sister asked about plans for the following weekend that we'd discussed earlier in the day. The genuine care and inclusion they were showing me made the situation even more devastating, as I realized that Jake's reaction to my comment might not just end our relationship, but also cost me the family connections that had become important parts of my social and emotional life. When it came time for me to leave, Jake walked me to my car with the same polite formality he might show to any departing guest, thanking me for coming and telling me to drive safely without any of the affection or intimacy that usually characterized our goodbyes. There was no kiss, no hug, no plans made for when we'd see each other next, just a polite farewell that felt like the end of something, rather than a temporary separation until our next date. I drove home in complete silence, replaying the comment I'd made about his father, and trying to understand how something that had seemed so harmless in the moment could have created such immediate and devastating consequences for our relationship. The days following the barbecue were filled with increasingly desperate attempts to reach Jake and repair whatever damage my comment had caused to our relationship. But every effort at communication was met with complete silence that made it clear he was deliberately avoiding contact rather than simply being busy or distracted. My text messages were read but never answered. My phone calls went straight to voicemail, and my attempts to reach him through social media were ignored entirely. Jake had essentially ghosted me without formally ending our relationship, leaving me in limbo about whether we were still together or if I should consider us broken up. The uncertainty was almost worse than a definitive breakup would have been, because it left me constantly hoping that he might eventually respond and give me an opportunity to explain what I'd really meant by my comment about his father. After 3 days of silence, I decided to go to Jake's apartment and attempt a face-to-face conversation that would force us to address what had happened, instead of allowing him to continue avoiding the situation indefinitely. But when I arrived at his building and tried to use the key he'd given me months earlier, I discovered that it no longer worked in his lock. Jake had changed his locks without informing me, effectively barring me from his apartment and making it clear that he no longer considered me welcome in his personal space. Sitting on his doorstep was a cardboard box that contained all the personal belongings I'd left at his place over the course of our 10-month relationship. Clothes, toiletries, books, and small gifts I'd given him that he was now returning as if they were unwanted clutter. On top of the box was a handwritten note that was brief but devastating in its finality. Jake had written that I was free to joke about whoever I wanted, but not while I was his girlfriend, making it clear that he considered our relationship officially over based on what I'd said about his father. The note didn't provide an opportunity for explanation or discussion. It was a unilateral decision that I was expected to accept without negotiation or attempts at reconciliation. Sitting in my car outside Jake's apartment building, holding a box of my own belongings, like evidence of a relationship that had been erased overnight, I finally understood that my comment at the barbecue hadn't just hurt Jake's feelings or created temporary tension between us. It had revealed something about my character and judgment that Jake found completely unacceptable in a romantic partner, something that made continuing our relationship impossible, regardless of how much love and history we'd shared before that moment. In my desperation to salvage something from the wreckage of our relationship, I spent the following weeks making increasingly pathetic attempts to contact Jake and convince him to give me another chance to prove that my comment about his father had been meaningless rather than revealing something fundamental about my character and values. I sent flowers to his workplace with apologetic notes explaining that I'd been drunk and stupid at the barbecue, that I'd never actually found his father attractive, that I'd just been trying to shock my friends with an outrageous comment that went too far. I reached out to his sister through social media, hoping she might be willing to serve as an intermediary who could help Jake understand that I was genuinely sorry and committed to rebuilding the trust I'd damaged with my inappropriate comment. I even considered contacting his parents directly to apologize for what I'd said about his father and assure them that it hadn't represented my actual feelings or intentions, though I ultimately decided that would only make the situation more embarrassing for everyone involved. But all of my attempts at reconciliation were ignored or politely deflected, making it clear that Jake had shared enough details about our breakup with his family that they understood why he'd ended things and weren't interested in helping me attempt to change his mind. The final blow came when Jake's cousin posted a photo on social media that was clearly designed to send a message about the situation and ensure that everyone in their extended social circle understood exactly why our relationship had ended. The photo showed Jake and his father at an upscale bar, both looking handsome and confident, while talking to two attractive women who were clearly enjoying their company and attention. The caption read, "Like father, like son," which seemed innocuous enough to casual observers, but was obviously a direct reference to my comment about his father being more attractive than him. The comments on the photo were filled with people from Jake's family and friend network who clearly understood the subtext and were showing their support for both Jake and his father while simultaneously making it clear that they knew about my inappropriate comment at the barbecue. Several people made comments about how good both men looked, how lucky those women were to have their attention, and how nice it was to see them out enjoying themselves after what had clearly been a difficult period. The photo and its comments section became a public referendum on my character and behavior, with Jake's entire social network weighing in to show their support for him while implicitly condemning me for whatever I'd done to end our relationship. The most devastating aspect of the public humiliation was realizing that Jake hadn't just ended our relationship. He'd made sure that everyone who mattered to him understood exactly why he'd made that decision, ensuring that my reputation within his social circle was permanently damaged. In the months that followed Jake's systematic destruction of our relationship and my reputation within his social network, I was forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about what my comment at the barbecue had really revealed about my character, judgment, and approach to romantic relationships. Looking back honestly at the moment I'd made the comment about Jake's father being more attractive than him, I could see that it hadn't been the innocent joke I'd convinced myself it was at the time. There had been a deliberate cruelty in choosing to compare Jake unfavorably to his own father, particularly in a context where family members and friends might overhear and where such a comparison would be especially humiliating and emasculating. The comment had revealed that I was capable of betraying Jake's trust and dignity for the sake of entertaining my friends, that I valued getting laughs and appearing shocking more than I valued protecting the feelings and reputation of someone I claimed to love. Jake's decision to end our relationship immediately and completely hadn't been an overreaction to a harmless joke. It had been his recognition that I was someone who couldn't be trusted to maintain appropriate boundaries or show basic respect for him and his family. By making the reasons for our breakup public, Jake had protected himself from questions, pressure, and well-meaning attempts at reconciliation from people who might not have understood the severity of what I'd done without knowing the specific details. The photo of him and his father with other women had been a particularly clever way of reclaiming the narrative, showing that both men were attractive, confident, and capable of connecting with people who would treat them with appropriate respect and admiration. Most painfully, I realized that my comment had revealed fundamental problems with my character that extended beyond just poor judgment in that particular moment. I'd shown that I was someone who could betray intimate confidences for social approval, someone who would sacrifice a partner's dignity for temporary entertainment, someone who couldn't maintain appropriate boundaries even within the context of a committed relationship. Jake had recognized that these weren't isolated issues that could be addressed through better communication or increased sensitivity, but core character flaws that would continue to threaten any relationship I might have with someone who expected loyalty and respect from their romantic partner. The social isolation that followed our breakup wasn't just punishment for my inappropriate comment. It was the natural consequence of revealing myself to be someone who couldn't be trusted with intimate relationships or family connections. The friends who'd laughed at my comment about Jake's father had probably been as shocked as I was when they realized he'd overheard. But they'd also learned something about my character that changed how they viewed my judgment and reliability in social situations. Future romantic relationships would be affected by my reputation for making inappropriate comments about partners and their families. As word of my behavior spread through social networks and dating communities where such information influences people's willingness to trust someone with their emotional vulnerability. The silence in my apartment wasn't just the absence of Jake's voice and presence, it was the sound of consequences for treating someone's love and family connections as material for entertainment rather than recognizing them as precious gifts that required protection and respect. Some mistakes reveal truths about our character that can't be explained away or forgiven, and some relationships can't survive the discovery that one partner is willing to betray intimate trust for the sake of getting laughs from friends who probably wouldn't have found the joke funny if they'd understood the real cost of my moment of poor judgment.